Chapter 4164. Second More. The Temple of Life Sacred Lamp is a place where practitioners of each Temple of Life leave a mark of life. Whenever the practitioner of the Temple of Life falls, the lamp of life he left in the Temple of Life lamp will go out. Well. Huishuan Supreme nodded his head. He had made a plan in his heart. If Jian Wushuang really died in the ruins of Tai Luo, then no matter who killed Jian Wushuang, no matter what his background, he would kill him. After a while, the two came to the Temple of Life lamp, and saw the lamp of life, which belongs to Jian Wushuang. It was a bronze ancient lamp, and the lights on it were much weaker than the turbulent lights on other ancient lamps, but the Supreme Master of Blood and the Great Axe saw each other with relief. Fortunately, although the sword of Wushuang's magic lamp of life is faint, it has not been completely extinguished, at least it means that he is still alive. The Great Axe began. Bloody Supreme's originally gloomy face that could drip water, slowed down when he saw it, and coldly hummed, "Fortunately, he didn't die, otherwise." When Bloodwave Supreme said this, he paused. "Okay, since Jian Wushuang hasn't died, let him handle it all by himself. I believe he has his own good fortune, and we don't need to intervene." Giant Axe smiled comfortably. Bloodwave Supreme nodded, and then the figures gradually disappeared into the Lamp Hall of Life. Taro Ruins, 2nd floor. Sword Warriors is sitting cross-legged, continually refining the 9-leaf swordgrass and the Taoist principles of Chinese goods. The scent of Kendo's origin and the laws of the universe, like a ball, wrapped him in it. At the same time, in the depth of Jian Wushuang's soul, a true consciousness belonging to Jian Wushuang slowly woke up. Sure enough, dormant is the best option. The consciousness belonging to Jian Wushuang was instantly sober, and the tide-like memories gradually poured into him. The consciousness of Jian Wushuang instantly understood everything. The level of Wu Weapon's Excalibur has been raised to the extreme of the treasure of the law. The consciousness formed by the sword consciousness narrowed his eyes, and the idea that he originally intended to regain his house was pressed by him. He could feel that the people who had taken his body were trying to improve his body by all means, and the level of hard work made him feel ashamed. In this case, it is not urgent for the time being. Jian Wushuang's conscious body's eyes flashed, he made a decision instantly, and watched its changes first. The sword spirit of this Tai Luo divine sword carried the remnant thoughts of Tai Luo Supreme Sword. At the beginning, he also went to the north to battle with Tai Luo Supreme. His knowledge was extraordinary. However, although this sword spirit is well informed, but the sword that he is facing is unparalleled, it is difficult to see a perfect life in an era in the universe. For the perfect life, this sword spirit knows something. For example, he knows perfect life develop your own innate advantages to the extreme, and your own divine strength can reach 10,000 times that of ordinary practitioners. But there are some extremely secretive things, this sword spirit, but do not know. For example, the unique immortal body possessed by perfect life fully integrates the origin of its soul into the divine power. Only if the divine power is not completely annihilated, it will not die. Because of this, in terms of soul, Sword Unparalleled is invincible. In the past, Demon Flame also attempted to take the house of Jian Wushuang, and his soul power was far more powerful than the original Jian Wushuang. But the end result was that the magic flame was directly reduced to a sword unparalleled slave. No one can deal with perfect life from the soul side. This sword spirit exerted the same means of looting against Jian Wushuang. It seems that he now occupies Jian Wushuang's deity and occupies all of Jian Wushuang. But in fact, it was Jian Wushuang who deliberately let him control his own body, and his own consciousness had long been dormant. No way, he can only do so. If this sword spirit is too terrible, knowing that robbing a house is useless to himself, maybe the sword spirit will directly drain all his divine power and vitality, and then he will really die. Now that the Tai Luo Excalibur sword spirit not only robs him, but also thinks of ways to improve his strength after he thinks he has succeeded, Jian Wushuang naturally enjoys it. I'd like to see, what step can he take to improve my strength? Jian Wushuang's consciousness murmured to himself, and then this consciousness was completely integrated with his own divine power, no matter what it was. How clever the magic sword and sword spirit means, we can never find the existence of his consciousness. One thought, thousands of mountains. In a heartbeat, the whole world changed. This vast universe never stops because of who it is. Fighting in the universe is there all the time, and the battles in the Taro ruins have never stopped. But in the blink of an eye, the years went away for 1,000 years. In a void fissure, the second floor of the Taro ruins, Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes, and in those eyes that were as deep as swirls, there was a flamboyant ghost fire beating. Ha 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 ha, God bless me. I never imagined that the talent of this junior's body in Kendo was so high. In just 1,000 years, I realized the origin of Kendo universe and reached the 3rd level. Sword Wushuang stretched out 5 fingers, covered his face and laughed. He is just a sword spirit. Before, he did not have the consciousness of Kendo. After he controlled the body of Jian Wushuang, he naturally mastered everything that Jian Wushuang understood, and Jian Wushuang's previous understanding of the origin of Kendo universe has reached the first. The double is almost complete. In this millennium, because of the 9-leaf sword grass, he not only reshaped the former Taylor Supreme Taro Kendo, but also pushed Taro Kendo to the 3rd level of Kendo's origin in one fell swoop. In addition, the effect of the Chinese rule of law is also not small, and his perception of the laws of the universe has been greatly improved. Even the rules of heaven and earth have benefited a lot. The 8th rule of heaven and earth has already been there are signs of convergence. It seems to be back to the top, it is just around the corner, this universe is destined to belong to the era of my Taro. Sword Warriors has a weird smile. He has begun to imagine that after he has mastered the body thoroughly and put in everything that the body has, he will have a beautiful blueprint in the universe. When I want to come must be wonderful. Jian Wushuang squeezed his chin and looked confident. With this body in existence, why worry he can't cross the universe? Quartet. At this moment, his future essence is still unknown, but in the depth of his soul, Jian Wushuang's conscious body, his expression is extremely exciting. Chapter 4165. The first is more. Is this guy serious? Jian Wushuang's heart was strange. For a whole 1,000 years, he looked at this terrible remnant, like a diligent, hard-working and cultivating old cow, controlling his body and trying everything possible to improve himself every minute and every second strength. Jian Wushuang's body of consciousness is becoming more and more determined. It is right that he chose to dormant temporarily. Without this guy, if he wants his strength to be improved so quickly, what year of the monkey is he waiting for? This remnant of Tai Luo is simply a gift from heaven to him, and has helped him to improve his strength. Of course, the premise of all this is that he is a perfect creature like a feather in the universe, and it is also because this sword spirit does not fully understand the perfect life. In this soul, as a perfect creature, he only needs to move his mind to start a counterattack against Taro sword spirit, or even kill it. Once this soul is killed, this Taro soul uses everything learned by Jian Wushuang will be taken over by Jian Wushuang without hindrance, and there will be no discomfort. Because this is what his own body understands. Soul overseas. Well, now, in all aspects, it has almost reached the peak of this body. The next breakthrough is only a matter of course. Jian Wushuang held his chin for a while, then said to himself, "Hey, it's almost time to go out, but these things can't be dropped before going out." Thinking of this, Sword Warriors went straight to the 4th floor, and put that Tara sword code into the ring. Immediately afterwards, he went to the 3rd and 2nd layers again, and collected countless magic drugs and magical treasures into the ring of Qian Kuan. On the 1st floor, however, this remnant of Tai Luo just received 5 cosmic source stones, almost 50 million pieces, which made the sword unparalleled consciousness in the sea of souls a pity. At the same time, he was ready. As soon as the Taro remnant left the void in the void, he would immediately kill the Taro remnant and regain control of the body. 3 days later, residual spirit of Tai Luo, driving Jian Wushuang's body, came to the 2 demon statues on the 5th floor outside the hall. Hundreds of chaos ages have finally disappeared here, and finally I found a suitable body and left this ghost place. Sword Warriors laughed, pressing his palm against the head of the statue on the left. Rumble. Instantly, a huge vortex like a black hole appeared in the void. Swords of Wushuang stepped hard, and shot at this huge vortex in an endless laugh. Inside the Taro ruins. On the bank of a river, 2 forces are facing each other. It is more appropriate to say that it is a hunting. On one side is a hunting squad formed by 6 ultimate masters, who are dedicated to killing the ultimate masters who are single or weak in the Taro ruins, similar to those of the Chiba gods and Zitong masters. On the other side, there are 2 ultimate masters who have placed orders. They are full of gods, and there is a potential for collapse. If there are no ultimate masters who are surrounded by the 6, there seems to be no fear. Ultimately dominate the strangulation. The master of the stars, the master of the heavens, hand over the cold iron stone, we can guarantee that you too will leave. A hunting squad, a big man holding a double hammer and a braid on his back, said. The 2 people who were hunted heard the news, and they suddenly laughed loudly as if they had heard some funny jokes. Ha 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 ha, Agalo, if you are kidding a child, you still use it to lie to a ghost. The star of the 2 dismissed him, and he knew in his heart that if the hunting team did not care about him destroying it before he died, the cold iron stone had already shot and killed the 2. Why would there be so much nonsense with them? Whenever they faithfully agreed, they surrendered the cold iron stone obediently, fearing that they would soon face a storm-like attack. I don't know how. Immediately, the little braided man's face sank, and the killer flashed. In this case, the master of the stars and the master of heaven, you can't blame our cruelty. Kill. Suddenly, this team is dominated by the 6 ultimate hunting and killing teams, transformed into 6 gods, and attacked towards the 2. Rumble. At this moment, the sky and the earth suddenly changed, and the void seemed to be torn from a mouth. This mouth was first a small black spot. Then, the black spot gradually expanded, and gradually, it turned into a huge vortex filled with dark clouds and lightning. Well, this seat is finally out. A wild laughter sounded abruptly. The hunting squad, which had been turned into the 6 gods to the Star Master and the heavenly host, immediately stopped, and looked up at the whirlpool in shock. The Lord of the Stars and the Lord of the Heavens could not help but look up at the sky. Call out. I saw a black streamer, radiating from the black vortex instantly, standing in front of them in the endless mad laughter. This. Who is this? The hunting team and the 2 masters of Shingdo and Tiansu were shocked. They had never heard of who in Taro's ruins could tear the space, let alone walk out of the void crack. The black streamer gradually dissipated, and the exposed figure was a young man in black with a grim expression. Who is he? The divine power on his body fluctuates, as if it only seems to control the 4th series. All 8 were puzzled. The original shock was a little slow as they discovered that the young man only had the 4th level to dominate the cultivation. Hey! It's hundreds of times of chaos. This seat finally breathed fresh air. The young man in black stretched his waist first, and then licked the corner of his mouth greedily. This person is the sword Wushuang, who is controlled by the Tai Luo Excalibur. Boy, who are you? A cold hum sounded suddenly. Jian Wushuang looked sideways, and saw a big man holding 2 sledgehammers and a braid on his back, looking at him with a mischievous face. Upon seeing this, Jian Wushuang's face suddenly became cold, and he said, Aunt Ants, are you talking to this seat? When the little braided man heard the words, he was very angry and smiled. The other masters also looked strange to the extreme. Are you a master of the 4th level, dare to call me a gnat? The little braid's eyes flickered with maggots. Although he did not know where the young man in black came from, the cultivation was real, and a 4th level master of the area was not taken into account by him at all. Oh! Seeing you like this, do you want to do something with this seat? Do you know, whose territory is this? Sword of Sword beating fiercely, smiled vaguely. Chapter 4166. The second is even more. Pretend to be a ghost. The little braided man snorted, then lifted the sledgehammer with both hands, and smashed his head at the sword Wushuang, dead. Seeing the situation that day, the host and the Star Master couldn't help sighing in their hearts. The 2 had already died, and there was no doubt that there would be someone else who would die in front of them. Light of Fireflies, dare to compete with Jiao Yue? Sword warriors pulled out a cruel arc, and whispered with a strange whisper, okay, just use your blood to witness the name of my warriors. Suddenly, sword warriors suddenly drew a sword, and a sword that was completely out of the swordess warrior burst out. A demon-like red mang was chopped out of the Wu Weeping sword, and chopped down towards the little braided big man. At this moment, the 8 people present seemed to hear the cry of the gods and the mourning of heaven. This is not the power of the sword unparalleled, but the power of the tailored Excalibur itself. This power, how is it possible? The little braided man roared incredulously and raised his double hammers to resist. However, before he finished his sentence, the red man suddenly passed over here. A weird scene happened. The little braided man was not split in two by a sword, but the majestic body dried up quickly at the speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few breaths, the little braided man was completely drained by the sword and turned directly into a dead body. A cold wind blew through, and the bronze deity turned into numerous powders, and went away with the wind. With one sword, the ultimate dominator is destroyed. Seeing the situation, the 7 people all took a sigh of cold air, and their faces were full of astonishment. They looked with horror at sword warriors, and saw that sword warriors had drained the little braided man's energy from his sword, and his pale face suddenly burst into a scarlet red. What kind of monster is this? The 5 people who hunted the squad looked at each other, and they could see the raging waves in their eyes. The strength of the little braided man, they know very well, not to mention that he is the invincible level of the ultimate dominator, but it can also be regarded as a genuine top ultimate master. As a result, he was dominated by the 4th level in front of him. Well, the taste of divine power is really delicious. Jian Wushuang issued a low smile smirk, and then looked again at the remaining 5 masters of the hunting team, a greedy flash in his eyes. Come, all together as the soul of my sword, to witness the Wu sword reputation. Boom. With a loud noise, the battle broke out. If it is the sword's deity, and facing these 5 ultimate masters at the same time, I am afraid it will not be so easy, but unfortunately, they are now facing the Taro Excalibur that deterred the sky 10,000 years ago. Even the Squad King Squad and Taishu Shenzi Qingzuzi fell into the hands of the Taro Excalibur. From this we can see how powerful the Taro Excalibur is. An overwhelming amount of evil and overbearing power overflowed. The 5 ultimate masters did not have much capital to compete with, and there was no chance of escape. In just a moment, all of the 5 ultimate masters died in the hands of Sword Muzu. The redness on the face of Jian Wushuang is more and more evil. There are still 2 little bugs. Jian Wushuang bent his waist, slowly looking at the Star Master and Heaven Master's eye, and stretched out his scarlet tongue, licking the corner of his mouth greedily. Senior, the 2 of us have no intention of offending. The Star Master and Heaven Host saw the symptoms, and suddenly a cold air rushed straight from the spine to the top of the head, and the roots of the teeth were trembling with fright. Where is this 4th level master? The 4th level of domination can kill the ultimate such as pigs and dogs. No offense. Jian Wushuang laughed strangely, and immediately moved his steps toward the 2. A demon-like hegemonic sword engulfed them in a square inch of land under their feet. The Star Master and the Heavenly Host slaughtered under this demon-like hegemonic sword. They couldn't even take a simple step down. Just when Jian Wushuang was about to reach out their big hands and press them on their heads. Suddenly, Sword Warriors suddenly covered her head, her features were extremely distorted, and she snarled in pain. No way, how could you not be dead? Deep in Jian Wushuang's soul, his true consciousness slowly opened his eyes and calmly said, Taro, it's time to give me back my body. At this moment, Tai Luo Jianling was shocked to realize that his control of this body was gradually getting out of control. All the magical powers in his body turned out to be like a mutiny. Jian Wushuang was covering his head, his expression was distorted because of pain, and a horrible sound wave unlike humans was emitted in his mouth. What's the matter? Star Master and Heaven Host Jay saw the situation, and couldn't help but start a shock and glanced at each other. There must be something wrong with this monster. Leave him alone, let's run away. The 2 immediately made a decision, seeing that the evil sword that suppressed them was gradually weakening, and suddenly stepped hard, out of the restrictions, quickly shot away from the distance without looking back. Taro Sword Spirit, who controls the body of Swordless Sword, has no time to take care of it at this moment. He is kneeling on the ground, clutching his face, and painfully miserable. No. I am Tara Sword Spirit. Swordless, you can't kill me. The face of Jiang Wushuang was full of panic. He actually found out that the body was gradually out of control, and his consciousness was annihilating at a very fast speed. At home, Jian Wushuang's soul is like a battlefield between two armies. One side is Jian Wushuang's consciousness, and the other is Tai Luo Jianling. It originally eroded almost half of Tai Wujian's soul. It is dying fast at a rate of ebb tide. In the sea of soul, the body of consciousness formed by the sword consciousness of the sword, said lightly, "Sword spirit, don't say that you are just a remnant left after the death of Tai Luo Supreme, attached to the Tai Luo Excalibur. Even if it is true Taro Supreme is here, and it is impossible to take me away. I've obviously taken you away, and your soul has been completely annihilated by me. Why? Why haven't you died?" In the soul of Jian Wushuang, a dark golden demon sword is sending out a terrifying howl. This is exactly the Luo sword spirit. Jian Wushuang's expression was calm, and he would not explain the unique immortal body of the perfect creature to him, and said lightly, "Sword spirit, you should never choose to take me away. If you completely remove me, the magic drains, and you may really succeed. Unfortunately, there has never been any in this world, so annihilate it." Chapter 4167. Third more. With Jian Wushuang's right hand pressed lightly, stunned, countless divine power rushed towards the dark golden demon sword inside his soul. No. The sword spirit was terrified. If anyone saw Jian Wushuang at this time, it would be absolutely startled. I saw Jian Wushuang half kneeling on the ground with both hands on the ground. That face was like changing his face. His expression became distorted and crazy, and his expression became calm and cold. Two different personalities are fighting for the body. In his throat, it was as if two people were talking, sometimes emitting terrifying sound waves that were not human, and sometimes calm, as if they were telling a logical thing. After Ayaka time passed. Jian Wushuang's expression calmed down completely. He sat down with his knees closed, and slowly closed his eyes. Next moment. I am swordless. Jian Wushuang opened his eyes suddenly, and the hollowness and treacherous fire in his eyes had disappeared, replaced by the calmness like the deep sea. That Taro sword spirit just persisted for less than a moment and was completely killed by his soul consciousness. The memory of Tai Luo Jianling was also absorbed by Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang also fully understood what this Tu Luo Jianling is. This Taro sword spirit is a stubborn remnant thought of hundreds of chaos prehistoric times after Taro Supreme died. As time slowly passed, 10,000 years ago, this stigma of resentment gradually gained an autonomous consciousness, and controlled the Taro Excalibur placed on the 5th floor and became the Taro sword spirit. The Tai Luo divine sword, under the influence of this stubborn lingering thought, has slowly become a downright magic sword. With the birth of autonomous consciousness, ambition is like a seed buried in the soil, which gradually takes root and sprouts. This Taro sword spirit is no longer willing to settle in Taro's ruins. He wants to re-enter the top of the universe and get back his glory. Therefore, 10,000 years ago, the ruins of Thara appeared. It is not so much that the Taro ruins were discovered, but it is Taro sword spirit who deliberately controlled its birth. For a time, the whole universe was turbulent, and all major forces sent top powerhouses. This Taro sword spirit was afraid that the Supreme found his existence, and even knew that if the Supreme entered the ruins, he would not be able to take possession and control. The threshold was placed at the level of domination. As a result, the top dominated the fish, and he chose the King of the Wind at the time. Therefore, he was taken away by the King of the Wind, and the team of the King of the Wind was even devoured by the power of the Taro Excalibur. Unfortunately, although the King of the Wind is the leader in the ultimate domination, the talent cannot satisfy him at all. He understands that with the talent of the King of the Wind, he can never reach the top of the universe. Therefore, he continued to wait until the battle between Jian Wushuang and Qing Shuzi, a full 300,000 sword qi erupted, completely attracted him. Jian Wushuang and Qing Shuzi did follow his guess, and entered the 2nd floor of the Taro ruins, and stepped closer to him. He calculated every step accurately, but counted thousands of times, but did not count the secret of Jian Wushuang as a perfect soul. In the end, everything he did was thrown away, and he made a wedding dress for Jian Wushuang in vain. This time it's just my life. Jian Wushuang raised his head and smiled bitterly. Even though it was him, he couldn't help secretly rejoice. If it wasn't for the time when he was taken away, he would immediately choose to dormant temporarily and make the illusion of being completely taken away by Tai Luo sword spirit. Then he would only be completely drained by Tai Luo sword spirit and fall on the second floor of the Taro ruins. However, this time, although it is dangerous, the gain is also huge. Thinking of this, the joy in Jian Wushuang's eyes was a bit uncontrollable. It can be said that this encounter was nothing but a great fortune to him. He can clearly feel that his understanding of the origin of Kendo has been greatly improved, and he has reached the 3rd level. You must know that this level can already be compared to those who are good at Kendo. And the 9-leaf swordgrass that contains the original Kendo essence of the universe has not completely disappeared. Jian Wushuang has the 9-leaf swordgrass that contains the Kendo essence of the essence. You can go one step further. It is needless to say that other understandings of the laws of the universe, and the improvement of the ranks of Wu weapon sword. Today's sword unparalleled, although he has not yet broken through the 5th level of domination, but his strength still has greatly improved compared to before. With the painstaking efforts of Tai Luo Jianling to improve for him, his strength has completely obtained a qualitative huge leap. If he were to meet Qing Shuzi again at this moment, Jian Wushuang can be sure that he absolutely does not need to run away anymore, he only needs to show the dragon's secret. Surgery. You can easily compete with Qing Shuzi, even the outcome is difficult to say. In other words, Jian Wushuang's current combat power is also almost invincible without revealing his whole cards. Once he plays some whole cards, such as Dragon Mystery, Talented Magic, etc., he is definitely the ultimate master. Invincible strong. Among the masters who can be stronger than him, it is estimated that there are only monsters such as Jujiawang. In addition, compared to these improvements in strength, what really makes Jian Wushuang ecstatic is the Taro sword in his god. Sword warriors looked inside slightly, and saw that his body was dark gold, the blade was covered with mysterious runes, and the sword had an exquisite sword that was suspended in a straight line. This is truly the big killer of that famous universe, the Taro Excalibur. This is enough to make the supreme enthusiastic treasure of the universe. Jian Wushuang sighed slightly, not thinking that the greatest opportunity of this Taro ruins fell into his hands under the influence of misery. Xian. Jian Wushuang sighed, his spirits were surging, and the Taro sword was forced out of him. A scourge of heaven and earth, enough to destroy the coercive breath of the stars, was taken invisible from the Taro sword, and the void around it was distorted and broken. The power of this sword is really terrible. The sword is unparalleled. If you can evoke all the power of this sword www.mtlnovel. It is estimated that it is enough to kill the ordinary supreme. Sword warriors is really beyond imagination. At that time, Tai Luo Supreme held this Excalibur. How powerful was it? It's just a pity that swordsman Wusuo tried it, and now he can't urge this Taro Excalibur at all. His immense power, after entering the Taro Excalibur, was like a mud ox entering the sea, and even a ripple could not be stirred. I am afraid that only when he is promoted to dominate the 5th level, or when he finally dominates the realm, is it possible to motivate this 1/1000th of the power of the Taro Excalibur. This could not help disappointing Jian Wushuang. Chapter 4168. The first is more. Also, if I am now, I can control the power of this Taro sword, but it is easy for me to become dependent and not good for future growth. Jian Wushuang shook his head. Although disappointed, he was not too depressed. Just when Jian Wushuang planned to put the Tai Luo divine sword into the ring of Chen Kuan, his expression was stunned. Can't fit in. He actually found out that the Chen Kuan ring could not hold the Taro Excalibur at all. If it was forced to melt, the Chen Kuan ring would only be torn by the destruction sword sent out by the Taro Excalibur. It's a bit troublesome. The sword's eyes flickered. The sacred sword was so famous that someone in the universe would inevitably know it. If he wobbled around with the sacred sword, it would be tantamount to lighting a lantern in the toilet and dying. The innocence of the husband and the guilty conviction, Jian Wushuang still understands. I remember that there was a Fengshan vine in the 2nd floor of the Tara ruins, which was placed in the ring of Chen Kuan by the Tyler sword spirit. That fengshen vine can seal all the breath on the treasure. Jian Wushuang thought for a while, and suddenly looked bright, and found an ancient and vast vine in the ring of Qian Kuan. Speaking of which, in the unparalleled Qian Kuan ring of the sword, the heavens and earth are gathered together. In addition to the 5 cosmic source stones stacked into a hill, the top magic drugs and materials are countless. Although this fengshen fang is a rare treasure outside the world, it can be used to make the top quality rule treasure, but in the sword ring of the current sword and warrior, it is just a common god. Seal. The sword Wushuang sang softly, and for a while, the ancient vine skyrocketed, winding the taro Excalibur layer by layer, revealing only the hilt of the sword. The sharp destruction of the taro Excalibur suddenly disappeared, and when viewed from afar, it looked like an ordinary ancient sword. Jian Wushuang saw this, nodded with satisfaction, and carried it behind him. Next, it's time to learn about the Torah sword, but before that, some things need to be dealt with first. Jian Wushuang whispered to himself, and then looked at a certain direction in the distance. His eyes flashed through the killing. The Star Master and Heaven Master must die. Otherwise, he was upset. Although he asked the Star Master and Heaven Master, he didn't know anything about him, and only knew that he came from a void in the void, but in case the two of them leaked this, it would be unavoidable that some caring people would guess what. When the sword is unparalleled, maybe it will be a disaster. Although all this is just a speculation by Jian Wu, but only 1 in 10,000 chances, Jian Wushuang will choke this seed in the cradle. Jian Wushuang stepped hard with his right foot, and the whole man suddenly rose into the sky, chased away in the direction of the Star Master and the heavenly host. Bang! Jian Wushuang stepped into the sky 1 step at a time, 1 step faster than 1 step, and finally, the whole person suddenly turned into a horizontal thunder between heaven and earth. Above a high altitude, the wind was fierce. The Star Master and Heaven Master Zai were rushing, until they had hurried thousands of kilometers away from the riverside, and they were only slightly relieved. There must be something wrong with that monster, and it is estimated that it will catch up at 1:30. There was a hint of glee in the eyes of the Star Dominator. The Lord of the Stars, this is the way of the mountain without death. I thought it would be dead. Unexpectedly, under the turn of the peak, the two of us even lucked out a life. The world often says that there will be blessings if we do not die. It is estimated that our opportunities are also good. It's almost here. Tianzhu Zai smiled back. He escaped from his death, and his mood was a little better, and he even made a joke. The Lord of the Stars nodded his head, then shook his head again, with a look of worry in his eyes. We better not be too happy, the monster is a bit weird, maybe we will chase us. Oh! Master Tian heard the words, remembering the scene when Jian Wushuang slaughtered and hunted the squad, with a dignified expression in his eyes. Stars, what should we do next? The Lord of the Stars thought for a while, took a deep breath, and a decisive flash in his eyes. Tenju, we spread the news of the monster. After all, the monster came from the space directly in the ruins. This represents there may be another entrance to this Taro ruins. I believe that there will be someone interested in this Taro ruins. By that time, presumably the monster himself is too busy taking care of himself. Where else is there time to take care of us? Tian Juai heard the words, and immediately nodded in agreement. The Lord of the Stars continued, let's go, I remember the south is where Zhennan King is. We can first tell this news to Zhennan King, and with the nature of Zhennan King, I will certainly be interested. As the Lord of the Stars said, he planned to sweep south of the Tail ruins. In his eyes, there was a retreat, and he made plans in his heart, and after leaving it, he left the ruins of Tai Luo. In this Taro ruins, the treasures born have become less and less, but the competition has become increasingly fierce. The ultimate masters of his more ordinary strength have no place to stand, so it is better to leave. Just then, his shoulder was suddenly patted. Tenju, what are you doing? The Lord of the Stars also thought that it was the Lord of the Sky who shot him, and could not help but look back. As a result, he suddenly froze all over, like a lightning strike. I saw behind him a cold figure in black, staring blankly at him. You guys, where are you going? A ghostly voice sounded. It's you. In the meantime, the stars dominated the cold, and the eyes were frightened to fall out. How come this monster came so fast? You fled so fast before, where are you going? Jian Wushuang raised his head taller than him and looked down at him with a smile. The Star Master took a deep breath. Jishongshengshengji, his eyes turned, and he quickly laughed. Senior, I just wandered around, and then left this Taro ruins. I do not intend to go. Really? Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and said nothing. Of course yes, there are a lot of ultimate dominating top powers in this Taro ruins. I'm just one of the most insignificant. Naturally, I don't continue to blend in with self-knowledge. The Star Master shrank his head and grinned. He had already been frightened by Jian Wushuang, controlled by Tai Luo sword spirit, killing the 6 ultimate masters by one person, and at the moment when he saw Jian Wushuang, there was still the idea of daring to resist. At this time, Xingdou, hurry up, I just sent a message to King Zhennan just now. The voice of Heavenly Master Zhai walking in front of him suddenly came over. Chapter 4169. Second more. Kenan King's patience has always been bad, so let's not delay, otherwise what if the monster chases after him? The voice of the host continued to sound. For a moment, the Star Master's mouth widened, and he stretched his fingers tremblingly to point to the host's back, shaking his head while looking at Jian Wushuang. Before Senior, listen to me and explain, what is the name of the King of the South and the King of the North? I don't understand what he is talking about. The star dominated the forehead and hurriedly explained to the sword Wushuang. However, he hasn't finished waiting. I saw the heavenly host who was walking in front of me and did not get a response. He continued to speak in doubt. Star, what's the matter with you? You asked to go to Zhennan King and told him to tell him about the monster. Why do you stop now? The Lord of the Stars heard the words, and he couldn't help it. The next moment, he noticed that his brows were slightly wrinkled, and the murderous sword Wushuang was flowing out of his eyes. His forehead was leaping with blue tendons, and he looked fiercely at the host's back. He yelled and said, Heaven host. When did I say this? Then. I don't even know who the king of the south of the town is, and am looking for him? You guys don't talk nonsense. This sentence was stunned by the star's domineering atmosphere, and even the sword Wushuang almost believed it. The heavenly host who walked in front of him was startled by the roar that sounded like a thunder, and immediately struck a spirit. Immediately, there was a rage on his face, and he looked back angrily and said, Star, could it be that the magic is not done? You don't even remember what you said. Get. Before he finished speaking, he widened his eyes and remained dumb, and the words in his mouth became unconsciously repeated. I saw a young man with black hair in black next to the Star Master, looking down at him with no expression. When did this monster come? Next moment. Heavenly Host Jay suddenly returned to God, his lips trembling. Predecessors and seniors, all this is not my business. It was the guy from Xingdou who urged me to go to the king of Zhennan and said that he would make your affairs public. As soon as this remark was made, Jian Wushuang hadn't said anything yet, but the Star Master was dark before his eyes, almost fainted. Damn, it. The stars dominated with anger and anger. Just then, Jian Wushuang finally spoke faintly. Whether you go to the king of the south or not, it doesn't matter whether it was proposed by any of you, because the results are the same. A sword screamed into the sky. Wu Weeping Sword appeared instantly in the hands of Jian Wushuang, and the sword flashed across his eyes. Don't bother fighting, let's die together. Boom. Suddenly, the sword unparalleled draws a sword, a fascinating red mountain, like Xinghe rewinds, fiercely splits towards the Star Master and the Heaven Host Master. Tenju, do it. The Star Master looked at this sword that swept the world, and suddenly shouted. Tear it. He didn't dare to have the slightest reservation. He flipped his hands and a roll of Shingetu appeared in front of him instantly. This volume of the Xinghe map rose in the wind, and in just a few breaths, it reached the point where the sky was blocked. The 18 stars in this galaxy map are enough to form an extremely strong defense force. Even if the invincible power in the ultimate dominator comes, it will not be broken for a while. In the several chaotic eras in which he obtained this volume of the Xinghe map, it is unknown how many times of crisis, it is this volume of the Xinghe map that saved his life. It can be said that it is precisely because of the existence of this Xinghe map that the stars are dominated. Only with the ultimate strength in the realm of the ultimate domination, they dare to come to the ruins of Tai Luo. However, the Xinghe chart at this time is already full of scars, and there is a possibility of breaking at any time. How much defense power is left? Even the stars dominate their hearts. This volume of the Xinghe map has saved the Star Dominion too many times, and is already overwhelmed. Looking at the sky that came across the sky, like the swordman of the universe, the Star Dominator clenched his fists, looked sideways at the map of Xinghe blocking in front of him, and said quietly, "Old man, help me this time. You must survive." Suddenly, this swordman hacked on the Xinghe map at a very fast speed. Click, click. Suddenly, Jianmeng held back a little, and finally stalemate with the volume of Xinghe 2. The volume of the Xinghe map was a nasty clicking sound. Jian Wushuang saw this, his eyes flickered, and his brows raised. He is now carrying 2 Excaliburs at the same time, and although it is only the Wu Cry Excalibur that is pulled out at this moment, the Wu Cry Excalibur has been elevated to the extreme of the rule of treasure. The law of the universe is also skyrocketing. Although Jian Wushuang is still the 4th level dominator, his strength is no longer what it used to be. According to common sense, the general ultimate dominator is facing the sword unparalleled, and only the instant spike. Unexpectedly, the Star Dominator could block him with a sword with the volume of Xinghe map in his hand. This volume of Xinghe map looks like a superb defensive treasure, but the internal structure in this volume of Xinghe map has been severely damaged, and it cannot support a few swords. Jian Wushuang shook his head slightly, looked at the Lord of the Stars, and chopped down a sword again. A senseless struggle boom. Wu Wei's Excalibur trembled hundreds of millions of times. Instantly a voice similar to the cry of the gods crying, the voice of the Buddha and the demon, came out from the Wu weeping Excalibur. A swordman 100 times stronger than just now, split again. This sword is like tearing a hole in the sky, and the huge galaxy that covers the sky and the sun is cracked like a spider web. Click, click. Cracks spread across the galaxy, as if to break it apart. Bang bang. And the 18 connected stars on that galaxy map are bursting one after another. Finally, in the horrifying gaze of the Star Dominator, this volume of the galaxy map collapsed directly and exploded into countless pieces of debris. And the sword mantle that rips the lightning in the night splits again towards the Star Master. Do not. In a roar, this sword directly smashed the body dominated by the stars, destroying everything. The current sword is unparalleled, not to compete with the King of the 9 Calamities, but it can definitely be called a giant arm in the ultimate master. There is still one. Jian Wushuang beheaded the Star Master, and his expression did not change any emotions. He looked faintly at the distant heaven host. Escape. On the strength of the host that day, it was not as good as the Star Master. At this moment, when he saw that the Star Master was only under 2 swords, he was buried in the hands of Jian Wushuang. Where did he dare to have half the courage to fight? Suddenly, he quickly blasted away. Jian Wushuang's expression was calm, his toes were slightly lighter, and he swept across thousands of miles in an instant, appeared behind the host, and pointed into a sword, splitting his head toward the host. Zhennan King, come and save me, I have a big secret to tell. Before dying, the host exhausted all his strength and desperately shouted. The second is a little bit late, please forgive me. Chapter 4170. Court Death. The sword flickered in the eyes of Jian Wu, his fingers were like swords, and he severely chopped on the skull of Heavenly Host. There was no hindrance at all, a bloodline appeared at the position of the Heavenly Host's eyebrow, and then the Heavenly Host's body broke apart from the middle, and it was directly cut by the sword Wushuang one finger. This doesn't stop, Jian's eyes are cold, and a sharp and overbearing sword in his hand explodes to the extreme, and once again crushes every divine power of the host to ashes. Heavenly Host slaughtered, completely annihilated. After doing all of this, Jian Wushuang stood with his hands on his back, his expression changed for a while, and he didn't expect that the person would finally let the news out. Nothing, it is expected that the king of the south of the town can't guess anything based on this sentence alone. Even if he really noticed something, it wouldn't matter, it would be a big war. Jian Wushuang shook his head, no longer thinking, anyway, with his current strength, even if facing up to the king of the south of the town, not to mention victory, but Jian Wushuang can be determined that he will never be under that town of the south. The priority now is to improve our strength. As long as the strength is strong, even if everyone knows that I have a big secret in it, then what? Jian's eyes flickered for a while, then he stepped on his feet and walked away. At the same time, in a palace complex not far away, King Zhennan wore a red robe like blood, and his hair braided in small pigtails was scattered on his back, his eyes were slightly closed, and he sat barefoot on a main seat. Under him, a armor guard with a spear and heavy armor stood respectfully. This armor guard was the last armor guard left when he besieged King Nine Calamities 1,000 years ago. Master Wang, the general has just heard the voice of Heavenly Master Jie, saying there is a big secret to tell. God Jiawei whispered. After hearing the words, King Zhennan slowly opened his eyes, and said lightly, "My king heard it, and my king could sense that the breath of the two guys, Tiansu and Xingdou, had disappeared, and they wanted to be killed." God Jiawei heard the words, raised his head and wondered, "Master, is it true that Tian Fei has rumored that a secret report is true? But what great secrets can he know by his strength? Jiawu, don't look down on anyone. There are opportunities in this Taro ruins. Who knows what Tiansu and Xingdou found?" King Zhennan shook his head with a smile, then stood up and said, Come on, let's go and see Tiansu." Yes. God Jiawei's congratulations should be. After a while, the two came to the sky where the host of the sky had fallen. "Master, heavenly host Jie really fell here." God Jiawei felt the residual breath of heavenly host Jie in the void, and could not help but startled. King Zhennan didn't answer, but narrowed his eyes, his face flashed a little surprised and said to himself, "A strong Sordu breath, I remember there is no such strong Sordu master in this ruin." There was a moment of thought in King Zhennan's eyes, and he couldn't help thinking, is that the guy who is Qingzuzi back? As soon as the idea came out, he shook his head again and denied it. Qingzuzi's fame is not under him. Although he disappeared for thousands of years, it is not enough that the host and the two do not know him. If Qingzuzi chased them down, they would definitely tell the taboo. Want to come, this kills the two who dominate the star and Tiansu, not well known. "Master, what should we do now?" God Jiawei whispered. King Zhennan replied, "Go back first, such a mighty kendo atmosphere, and can easily kill the stars and heavens. This person must not be a weak person. The opportunity for the opportunity in the Taro ruins has just begun. Such a character, King Wang will deal with him sooner or later." Yes. They gradually went away. At the same time, a remote corner away from the central area of the Taro ruins, the sword sat cross-legged, sitting in front of his knees. It was the Taro sword code. There is a faint wave of divine power in the Taro sword code, like the aperture, the Taro sword code is wrapped in it. This wave of divine power was left by Tai Luo Supreme that year. It is precisely because of this wave of divine power that this Taro sword classic has gone through hundreds of chaotic periods without half damage. Are there only 5 pages? Jian Wushuang frowned. This Tu Luo Jian was not as thick and complicated as he thought. There are only 5 pages in total, and each of these 5 pages corresponds to a kendo magical power. In other words, there are 5 swordsman supernatural powers recorded in this Tai Luo sword classic. Sword unparalleled power, stretched out his right hand, opened the first page. A strong resistance was uploaded from Jian Dian. Although this resistance was strong, it was not harmful. It seemed to just check the reader if he had the strength to inherit his Jian Dian. Jian Wushuang saw a cold hum, and the power of his hands surged. He immediately suppressed this resistance and opened the first page. I saw on the first page of the bronzing paper, a pen sharply wrote a paragraph, introducing the first magical power in the Tara sword code. Light will be devoured by darkness, souls will move towards the cold winter, and the sun will eventually fall into the embrace of the night, and the world will thus fall into the deepest darkness. This darkness. Its name. Yongyi. Suddenly, the world in front of Jian Wushuang changed. Time seems to be accelerating, everything around is gradually fading, flowers and trees are starting to wither, the vitality of all living things in the world is slowly passing away. The stars became dim and the world seemed to turn into a thick grey. A moment later, the entire universe was plunged into eternal night, and a breath of death, coldness, dryness, and rigidity permeated. There was no light in Jian Wushuang's eyes. The root of all of this is just because of the sword in the mind of Jian Wushuang, who suddenly saw a figure with an unclear appearance and a sword. All darkness is the power of this sword. This sword can deprive all vitality and bring eternal darkness to the world. This sword is called Yongyi. In the blink of an eye, a year passed. Jian Wushuang looked at Tai Luo Jian Dian like that, without moving, as if falling into the deepest level of enlightenment. In the 10 feet of land around him, black sword-like swordsmen rose up, and then like a large net, densely intertwined to form a large black net ball, sitting cross-legged warrior's sword is wrapped in it. Spring is coming and autumn is coming, the 2nd year has passed. The color of this black ball became deeper and darker, and even darkness began to spread out, and everything around it was deprived of vitality. This was followed by the 3rd year. Jian Wushuang didn't know when it was up, closed his eyes, and the land around him was turned into a cold and dead place shrouded in darkness. He was completely caught in the deepest level of enlightenment. At the center of his body, the 9-leaf sword grass with 7 leaves left was melting and consuming at a very fast rate, and then turned into the consciousness of Kendo. All absorbed by the sword unparalleled. 4th year. 5th year. 6th year. Towards the end of the 7th year, Jian Wushuang finally opened his eyes. Chapter 4171. Second more. At the moment when Jian Wushuang opened his eyes, with him as the center, the darkness of hundreds of miles was broken. One sword becomes a nation. The kingdom of eternal night. In the eyes of Jian Wu, a black mang flash. For 7 years, with the help of Jue Jiankao not fully absorbed, he finally realized the first kendo magical power of Tai Luo Jian Dian, Yongyi. This sword goes far beyond the level of magical powers, and even subverts Jian Wushuang's understanding of kendo. Jian Wushuang never imagined that kendo could still be used in this way. Where is this sword? Definitely a thought of the kingdom of God that can be realized only by the use and improvement of kendo. This sword is the most mysterious, most obscure, and most profound sword ever seen in the history of Jian Wushuang. Even with Jian Wushuang's talent for kendo, he has only participated in these 7 years. Realized some fur. It can be said that Jian Wushuang's achievements in kendo today have no way to fully comprehend this kendo magical power. This sword made the sword unparalleled, and I had to be amazed and admit it. That Taro Supreme is worthy of being able to crush the starry sky and shine the everlasting invincible Supreme Sword Warriors is unimaginable. At that time, the Supreme Master Tai Luo enlightened on kendo. How terrible did he reach in order to realize such a terrible sword? It is no wonder that the Tailor Supreme at that time can be crowned the invincible name of Kendo Supreme since ancient times, and until now, no one can deprive him of this title. For the first time, Jian Wushuang raised a sense of awe at the Tailor Supreme who dominated the universe with his sword. This powerful Taro Supreme, plus a Taro Excalibur enough to destroy the stars, would be such a heroic Shaw in the universe at that time? But that's the case, he would be killed and fallen in this constant in the Yangxing domain, even the kingdom of God was erased. Jian Wushuang sighed in disbelief. In these 7 years, the more he realized the sword of Yongyi, the more he felt the power of Tai Luo Supreme. That is definitely an invincible power who can crush the ancients and make the stars surrender. But is such a strong man actually killed? This makes the sword unparalleled, and I can't help but feel my own smallness and the vastness of this vast universe. There is still a long way to go to practice. Jian Wushuang shook his head, no longer thinking about these things that are far from him. Counting it out, from entering the 2nd floor of the Tara ruins to coming out of the Tara ruins, plus these 7 years, more than 1,000 years have passed. I do know what is happening to Qingfeng Shenhu and King Jiulong. Thinking of Qingfeng Shenhu and King Jiujia, Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. At first, in the Fengyang Gorge, the 3 men were chased by the king of Zhennan, the 5 blood ambassadors, and the master of Yinpeng in order to compete for the elixir that increased the chance of breakthrough. Escape, find your way. Today, he is returning alive, but he does not know how they are doing. If you want to come, you should be fine. Even with the strength of King Jotsi, even if you can't defeat Zumingshi, Yinpeng, and Junnan King, these people should not kill him. As for Qingfeng, after leaving with me, no one is going to hunt him down, unless something unexpected happens, otherwise nothing should happen. Stop asking someone to find out. Jian's eyes flashed a thought, and now the greatest opportunity in the Taro ruins has been obtained by him. His strength has also been greatly improved, so there is no need to stay. However, before leaving, how to say hello to the old people who came with the two. Jian Wushuang was thinking, suddenly, a few golden lights across the sky. One ultimate master, 3 masters of the 5th series? Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow. With the birth of the Tara ruins more and more long, the opportunities in the Tara ruins are not limited to the ultimate master, and even the 5th level master has also come here. However, the ruins of Tai Luo eventually dominated the whole world, and the lineup of this team in front of Tai Luo is not enough to see, but it can be used to inquire about the news of King Zhoulong and Qingfeng Shenhu. The next moment, Jian Wushuang turned over with his right hand, and put on a wide black robe. The hood on the black robe stopped most of his face, revealing only his chin. Then he swept forward and came to the 3 in the sky. Behind people. Some, where are you in such a hurry, where are you going? Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. Of the 4, the ultimate master is a veteran with a bitch, with a strong spirit, while the other 2 are masters of the 5th level, a young man and a woman. It is restrained, but there is a sense of excitement and curiosity in the eyes. How can I not hold back? It seems that it is following the ultimate master who came to the descendants of the Tara ruins. Who is it? The old man Xuanzi was shocked, and when he looked back, Jian Jianhuang's breath was only the 4th level, and he could not help but relax his vigilance slightly. Immediately, a hint of doubt appeared under his eyes. This little friend, will you stop us? Jian Wushuang asked, Sir, do you know the 9 kings of the ruins? As soon as Jian Wushuang's voice fell, the old man had not spoken yet, and he saw the young girl behind him. His face flashed with excitement and replied, Coincidentally, is it possible that you went to the king of Zhoulong? Huh? Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow, and smiled back. Why, did you go to King Zhouyao? Yeah, I heard that the king of 9 calamities is a power of 1 genus and 2 genus in this relic. We are planning to take refuge. The old sister-in-law glared at her with a blame, and scolded, Xiao Qing, didn't the old man say, let you be careful in this ruin? Sister Sha, what do you say outside? The young man next to the girl said with a wry smile. The girl was so yelled at, and suddenly Zizi shrank her head and whispered, Master, I know. When the old man saw this, he nodded with a cold hum, then turned his eyes to look at Jian Wushuang, and faintly replied, Little friend, there is no secret. There are too many strong people in this ruin, and they kill and plunder. It is difficult for us to gain a foothold here because of the strength of several of us, so I really planned to find a strong man as a backer. The old man and the younger friend, you are the 4th level master, and want to come in this Taro ruins. It is also difficult. If you also want to take refuge in King 9 calamities, you can go with us. Jian Wushuang heard it, and smiled back, I'm thinking about it, so I'm in trouble. Anyway. The old man waved his hand indifferently. Immediately, the 4 men, Jian Wushuang and Xuanzi, swept away. Chapter 4172. Along the way, they were not fast, perhaps because Jian Wushuang was only the 4th level dominator. The 2 young and 3 people did not have much defense against him. Therefore, a few people were familiar with each other when they came to the place. Contacted. From the conversation, Jian Wushuang gradually learned the identities of the 3 men. The old man named Water Witch Master is a veteran ultimate master who has gone through dozens of chaos eras. He is also a top ultimate master in terms of strength. It is much stronger than the Star Master and Heaven Master. The young girl was his apprentice. The young girl was Ran Jiyu and the young girl was Qingxi. These 3 people came from a lonely starfield, and in that starfield, they could be regarded as a party's overlord, but it was obviously not enough to put it in the Taro ruins. For them, this time to the Taro ruins, they can, although it is good to get the chance, even if it is not available, the Lord of the Water which can bring his apprentices to the world. The Water which Master brought a total of 3 apprentices. However, just 100 years ago, his apprentice was tragically killed by a team of top powers in the ruins. Due to his own shortcomings, he intends to turn to the famous King of 9 Calamities in this ruin. However, relying on Jian Wushuang's understanding of Zhu Jiawang, these people's thoughts may be defeated. Blood swords, all forces in the relic now stand on their feet. Masters like you and us without any root background have no place at all. If you don't rely on some forces, it will only become increasingly difficult to survive. The young man named Ran Jiyu sighed. Perhaps it was because they saw Jian Wushuang alone, and they were not so high, so the young man named Ran Jiyu inevitably felt a little bit sorry for each other. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, and did not refute, echoing back, "The Lord Rangu said." After a moment of pause, Jian Wushuang spoke in front of him and asked, "Ran Jiyu is the master. I came to the Tera ruins not long ago, and dare to ask what is happening in the ruins now." Lord Ran Jiyu heard and thought for a while, and replied, "As the number of heavenly treasures in the ruins is getting less and less, the competition for heavenly treasures is becoming more and more fierce. Those who are strong alone are only alone. Unless some of them are extremely outrageous, it is already very difficult to survive in the ruins of Tai Luo. Now, most of these independent powerhouses are united to form a side camp. There are a lot of these camps, at least they are the ultimate dominators with near-invincible levels, but in general, the 5 ancient camps are still respected in this ancient monument." The 5 camps sword squinted and squinted his eyes. He did not expect the millennium he disappeared. The speed of change in the Tara ruins was so fast that the competition for opportunities had reached a situation where parties needed to join forces to form a camp. Jian Wushuang did not know, all of this was actually related to his killing of Tai Luo Jianling. The heavenly earth treasures in the previous ruins appeared to be random. In fact, they were all intentional arrangements of Tai Luo Jianling. The purpose was to find the perfect object. Now that Tai Luo sword spirit was killed by him, naturally no new heavenly treasures will be born. The 5 camps are extremely powerful, and now the number 1 is headed by the Blood Temple. After the Battle of Fengyang Gorge for 1,000 years, the Blood Temple has sent 4 Blood Nether envoys again. At the ruins of Tai Luo, plus the previous 5 deities, there are 9 full deities. Under the joint of these 9 deities, it can be said that no one is an opponent in this relic. The second place is the Dafeng Kingdom of Gods, who came to the ruins of Tai Luo hundreds of years ago. It is led by the 3 princes of Dafeng Kingdom of Gods, the ultimate invincible king. Speaking of this great devotion to the kingdom of God, Ran Jiyu dominated an ingrained hatred under his eyes. The playful young girl Qingxi heard the words, her face flashed a dim color, and her voice was slightly choked. Master was originally because he accidentally blocked the way to worship the kingdom of God, and was killed by the 3 princes. Jian Wushuang heard the words silently. The path of spiritual practice was cruel, especially in this Taro ruins. Without any rules and restrictions, the fall would only be more common. The water witch dominator who walked ahead didn't speak, but his fist clenched a little. The reason why he wanted to take refuge in the King of 9 Calamities and stay in the ruins was to have revenge, although it seemed that the hope was very slim. Taking a deep breath, Lord Rangu continued, "The 3rd place is the camp headed by King Josai. King Josai is recognized as the strongest master in the ruins. In theory, he can become a ruin in the ruins. The number 1 camp, unfortunately, the King of the 9 Kings is too arrogant and disdains to associate with others. Except that he has the ultimate master following what is called Qingfeng Shenhu, he hasn't received anyone yet. However, recently I heard that King Jojia had plans to expand his power, and it is for this reason that Master, and I have decided to trust him to try. There are 2 forces left, which is Yin Peng's and King Jinnan of the Great Sun God Kingdom. Yin Peng's dominance is worse than the 9 kings and the 3 princes of Dafeng, but it is because of him. His own strength is not too bad, and he doesn't have much background. Therefore, many independent strong men in Tai Luo's ruins are more willing to join him. After all, the leaders of the previous camps are too aggressive. If you really get the chance against the sky, 80% will be obtained by those headed by Yinpeng, but Yinpeng's is different. Yinpeng's is the ultimate domination. Among them is not Xion. Joining him, he really got a good chance, and Yinpeng can't dominate it. He must be honest and share it with everyone. So this Yinpeng dominates many of the strong powers gathered under his hands now, and some of us also had the intention to rely on Yinpeng to dominate at the beginning, but he has too many under his hands. The strength of ours is not at all he sees it. As for King Zhennan, it is said that under the Fengyang Gorge 1,000 years ago, the forces were greatly frustrated, and now they have been in the stage of forbearance, so it goes without saying. Jian Wushuang nodded when he heard the words, and heard the news that Qingfeng Shunhu was now with King Zhoujia. He was relieved a little. I chatted a few more words, and King's mood recovered. He laughed and quipped, "Bloodsword, you have the courage to be bold enough, even if the master of the 4th level is the master, you dare to run to this place. The ruins come." Jian Wushuang replied with a smile and said, "Before I came, I didn't expect this ruin would be so dangerous." Mobile phone users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iRead Novel. Chapter 4173. Second more. Bloodsword, since you are with us now, we will definitely take care of you. The girl Qingxi patted Jian Wushuang's shoulder and sighed with a grin, but, with your strength, join the 9. Do NT even think about the King of Calamity, but people can be the first ultimate master in the entire universe. It is estimated that even if you want to expand the power and accept the master, that is also the ultimate master of my master. You are the 4th level master. I will definitely miss it. Sword warriors heard this, some could not help laughing, but he also knows that this girl did not belittle what he meant. He replied unconvinced. You're right. Of course. Qingxi snorted quite contentedly after hearing the words, then seemed to be afraid of the sword without frustration, and quickly comforted and said, "You don't have to worry, as long as you follow us obediently, my master will enter the 9 Calamity Camp, will naturally protect us, and my teacher respects his elderly people best." Jian Wushuang heard the words, only found it interesting, and could not help but nodded. The master Wushirei who walked ahead noticed this scene and stared at Qingxi. "Xiao Qing, act with caution, act with caution." After speaking, Wushirei dominated Xiong Jian Wushuang, and smiled softly, "But you can know us, it is also a kind of good destiny. If the old man can really enter the King of the 9 Calamity Camp, it will be good to protect you at that time." "No. That's the trouble, water which dominate." Sword Unparalleled smiled, but it is a little sigh. Through his observations, 3 men are good and the generation heart, which naturally does no good, but in this fight predatory Donatello remains, but it is not necessarily a good thing. Time slowly passed. After a few hours, Sword Unparalleled, water which dominate his party of 4, came to the ruins of the central region of Donatello. "Little friends, there is the place where the King 9 robberies." Water which dominate pointed to a distant endless mountains. On that mountain, a huge repair the palace. Sword warriors everywhere you looked, I saw before the palace, there are many positive dominate Genwai waiting, expression of apprehension, most of which are dominated by the ultimate master. Those dominated all 9 robberies King people? Sword Unparalleled look back, puzzled asked. Water which dominate heard shook his head and replied, "No, as we all want the same, heard the news deliberately rushed over to take refuge in 9 robberies King. After all, in today's Donatello ruins, killing too crazy, if its own power if you are not strong enough. You will not be able to establish a foothold if you do not rely on them. Come on, we have in the past." After the water which dominate he then took a Sword Unparalleled, ran dominate the valley, the stream toward the palace snatched 3. "Shuejin, we need to stand behind my master, do not talk on the line, I have a master of all natural to deal with." Ran walked beside the Sword Unparalleled valley, quietly reminded the sentence. "Good." Sword Unparalleled nodded his head, indicating understand. A moment later, 4 fell outside the palace. Just fall, they hear these ultimate dominate, the sound of a road to discuss, pass over. You say, 9 robbery Wang suddenly expand their influence, to dominate in the recruitment of the remains. What does this mean? I don't know. It may be that the King of Nine Dragons saw the three princes and Yin Peng dominate them. They are expanding their forces, and they have a sense of crisis. The King of Nine Calamities has always been arrogant. This time to recruit masters, I am afraid that the ultimate master who is idle, he looks down on him. Try it, if you cannot enter the 9 robberies this side of the forces of the king, and so I can only go to take refuge in that Yin Peng dominate, but I've heard that Yin Peng dominate narrow-minded, but if we take refuge in his words, probably not better, eh? Many of the ultimate masters whispered discussions. Immediately, they saw the witchcraft masters coming with the 3 swordsmen's swords, and they suddenly made a frivolous noise. Well, 2 masters at the 5th level, and even masters at the 4th level? This strength comes to make fun, is it because of insults? Ha 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 ha, it's a joke. It should be withdrawing the ruins of Tai Luo at this level of strength. Isn't it here to stay dead? I was a little hesitant and uncertain about joining the forces of the King of Nine Calamities, but with these crooked and broken dates, I suddenly became confident. A whispered laughter came. All present were the ultimate masters, and at the moment they made sarcastic remarks, but they did not mean half of them. The girls Qingxi and Rangu dominated and heard a sudden anger on their faces. Even the water which dominated and their faces did not look good. Master, they're too much. The young girl Qingxi clenched her fists and whispered. The Lord of the Water Witches took a deep breath, and said lightly, whatever they want to say is up to them, we just need to take care of ourselves. But Qingxi wanted to say more, and saw the water which dominated the skeptical interruption, nothing but. Qingxi had no choice but to bow his head the water which dominated and saw a sigh of relief, thinking about it and saying, Qing'er, we have only joined the 9 kings' camp, here in the ruins of Tai Luo, there is a self-protection land, and with this self-protection land, we have a chance to avenge your master brother. Do you understand this? So this kind of unnecessary irony, let it go, as long as it does not affect our entry into the 9 kings' camp. Master, I know. Qingxi heard the words, still pulling his face. The water which master no longer said more, glanced at the end of the sword Wushuang, his head silent, and shook his head. At the same time, inside this palace, King Zhoujia stood in the middle of the hall and stood with his hands behind him. Qingfeng Shenhu was slightly behind him, standing behind him. The huge palace seemed a little empty. Zhoujia, do you really plan to summon the master and Yin Peng to fight a war before leaving the ruins? Qingfeng Shenhu asked. A deadly battle? He deserves it. Zhu Jiawang heard the words, sneered expressionlessly, and then his eyes flashed coldly. If there weren't too many rotten fishes and rotten shrimps around him, I would have come to the door. He killed, why would he keep him to this day? Qingfeng Shenhu heard a bitter smile and shook his head. If you would have recruited the ultimate master in this ruin earlier, there would still be Yin Peng. You didn't know, this one keeps the Yin Peng master until now, just to wait for the sword unparalleled, waiting for his revenge together. If it weren't for Yin Peng's shot in Fengyang Gorge, it was secretly accounted to me. Would Wushuang be hunted down by Qing Shuzi? After a pause, King Zhoujia said indifferently, but now that I know Jian Wushuang is still alive, but there is no news. Let us both report for him. Chapter 4174. Jian Wushuang did not die. The news was circulated to them by the Bloodwave Supreme. After all, Jian Wushuang's magic lamp staying in the Palace of Life is still on, but although he hasn't died, Jian Wushuang has lost contact with them all these years. There is no news at all. Obviously the situation is not good. In fact, before Jian Wushuang was faced with dramatic changes on the 2nd floor, his body was under the control of the Natalian sword spirit. Naturally, he could not get in touch with the outside world for thousands of years, and now Jian Wushuang is just new. Let's go, we have to rely on our ultimate master, and we are basically there. We only need to select some of the top ones, and you will personally guide them. If you want to come, it will be enough to defeat Yin Peng's master. Qingfeng Shenhu said. King Zhoujia nodded, and there was a coldness in his eyes. Now there are not many opportunities in the ruins of Tai Luo. On the 2nd layer of the ruins said by the King of the Wind, he has no news so far. I am afraid that it is also the guess of the King of the Wind. To this day, the ruins of Tai Luo have no need to stay, but before leaving, it was time to liquidate. Don't even try to escape if you are dominated by Blood Nether, King Zhennan, and Yin Peng. In the eyes of the King of Nine Kings, the cold mang flickered, and Qingfeng looked closely behind him, striding toward the palace. A moment later, the two walked out of the palace, and the crowd immediately made a noise. It is King Nine Calamity. King Nine Calamity is out. The King of Josei is really strong. The breath of divine power in his body is completely out of grade with me. An ultimate master. A flash of enthusiasm flashed in his eyes. The strong are respected and worshipped everywhere, and the King of Nine Calamities is the well-deserved strong among the ultimate masters. The King of Nine Kings was surprised when he heard this sentence, and there was no emotional change on his face. He gave a slight glance at the ultimate master outside the palace, and then said indifferently, "Want to join me? I can only have one request, that is to be able to take my hand. Come on, let me see your strength." After that, King Jojia stepped out and stepped into the void, overlooking many masters. Many of the ultimate dominators heard the words and looked at each other one after another, and they were a little bit uncertain. They did not expect that the request to join the forces of the King of Nine Calamities was to take him in. This was greatly unexpected. The King of the Nine Kings is in the ultimate master, and their strength is comparable to that of the Supreme. Although they are also the ultimate masters, many of them are top masters, but whether they can take the move of the King of the Nine Kings. The noisy audience had become a little quieter at this moment. For a moment, no one dared to take the initiative to take the Nine Kings. At the outermost part of the crowd, wearing a large black robe and a hood to stop most of their faces, dressed in an unobtrusive Jian Wushuang, the corner of his mouth could not help but draw a slight upward arc. The King of Nine Calamities is as conceited as ever. Jian Wushuang whispered to himself, and a smile appeared on his face. "Why are there so many of you, not even those who have the courage to take me one move?" King Jojia stepped into the void, looked down at the crowd, and spoke indifferently. As soon as the words came to an end, there was a commotion in the crowd. Immediately afterwards, he saw a burly ultimate master with a sledgehammer rising into the sky. "King of the Ninth Calamity, I am the Golden Ape." The ultimate lord is like a tower, giving a strong sense of oppression. He raised a face, his expression was sullen, and he said, "The world says the King of the Robbers is the strongest of the masters, even comparable to the Supreme. Today I will see if your King of the Nine Robbers is so arrogant. There is so much nonsense." King Jojia was expressionless, raised his palm directly, and patted at this golden ape. Rumble. Suddenly, countless divine powers raged, forming a huge palm covering the sky and the sun. This palm directly covers the entire sky, and the golden ape is dominated by this palm, which is almost as small as a maggot. "Take this palm, I will allow you to join my camp." King Jojia withdrew his hand, stood on his back, his expression indifferent. And that giant palm, with a tumultuous power, shot towards the golden ape dominator. "Break it for me." The Lord of the Golden Apes looked at this slump like a slump, roared, and immediately lifted a sledgehammer, slamming it into this palm. A wave of divine power gathered on his arms, and the muscles in his arms twisted and twisted, exuding horrific power. This hammer, with a palm photographed by Zhu Jiawang, was hit hard. The raging divine power burst out, making the whole mountain sway. Immediately afterwards, I saw that the golden ape dominated his mouth and spit out blood, and the whole person flew back, instantly falling to the ground, and smashing a small hole in the mountains. And that palm, even the light was not dimmed, as if it were bitten by an ant, and continued to photograph towards the golden ape. "Do not." The golden ape dominates, seeing this with a terrified expression. At this moment, he really understood how different the strength was between Zhu Jiawang and his ordinary ultimate master. Too weak. King Jojia shook his head and then waved his hand. The huge palm in the sky suddenly dissipated. "Take it away, the next one." King Jojia looked away and looked at the others again. There was silence in the audience, leaving only a heavy gasp. They were scared by the palm of King Nine Robbers, too strong. Although the golden ape dominates the ultimate master, although it is not the top, it can be regarded as extremely arrogant, and as a result, it can't hold it. The 9 kings of calamity are not at the same level as them. They could see that if the king of 9 calamities finally regained their strength, this palm would be enough to kill the golden ape. "Are you no one?" King Jojia said lightly. There was no reply from the crowd for a long time. Until a long time later, a middle-aged man wearing a linen and holding a magic gun came out of the crowd. Master of Gunchuan came to ask King Jotsai for advice. The middle-aged man had a dignified expression, and his sharp gun was as white as a rainbow, and his heart was extremely tense. "Take me a palm." The king of Josai didn't say much. Just as he did, he continued to take a picture of the gun lord. "Oh." Gunchuan master looked up at this palm, first took a deep breath, and then drank loudly, stepping on it, and rising into the sky. Suddenly, the sharp gun in the hand of the dominator of Chuanchuan exploded, and then shot like a dragon, stabbing 789 guns in succession. The gun shadows were intertwined and overlapped, like a curtain of impenetrable rain, slamming on the giant palm. After a while, the power of this giant palm gradually dissipated, and the sky was clear again. For desktop users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iRead Novel. Chapter 4175. Second more. It's ugly. Gunchuan dominated the ground, panting heavily, sweat dripping from his forehead. Many of the masters who watched the surroundings cast an envious glance. This person took the palm of King Jojia, which means that he can follow King Jojia. In the future, he should be able to run wild in this Terra ruins. However, the of Gunchuan's face did not have much joy, but he had a lot of fear. This palm just now, he received too uncomfortable, but he exhausted his whole body of power in a burst. However, despite this, he could barely offset the power of this palm. You know, this is just the palm that Zhu Jiawang took. He was not serious at all. King Jojia is too horrible. In the void, King Jojia bowed his head and looked at him, a touch of approval appeared in his eyes, and said lightly, "It's good to be able to take this palm." Time slowly passed, and gradually, many people came to challenge King Jojia. However, most of them did not take the palm of the King of the 9 Kings, so they had to lonely leave. Only a few of the famous and powerful men who ultimately dominated it barely took the palm of the King of 9 Kings. "Ran Ji, you take good care of Xiaoqing, and the master will go." The master of the water which told him a few words, then took a deep breath, his eyes showed a firmness, and he strode towards the King of Jolong. He knows, it's his turn. "Master, be careful." "Ran Jiu and Qing," she shouted worriedly behind. The Lord of the Water, which heard the words, paused for a while, but did not turn back, and continued to walk toward King Jolong. He knew in his mind that so many ultimate masters before, including some weaker top ultimate masters, could not reach the palm of the 9 kings. Although he was also the top ultimate master level, he was not much stronger and wanted to take the next 9. The King of Calamity was afraid it was difficult. But, for his great disciple, he must try it. After a while, he walked to the foot of King Jolong and arched his hand and said, "The King of Jolong, the witch in the water, ask for enlightenment." The expression of Zhu Jiawang didn't change, and he nodded and said, "Come on, boom." With a loud blast, the King of 9 Kings raised his palm and photographed it towards the water witch master. The surging divine power condenses to form a giant palm that can cover the sky. Each palm pattern is clearly visible, and is full of rich and mysterious laws of the universe. Immediately, this palm was pressed hard towards the master of the water witch. The water witch dominated, and he did not dare to relax at all. His hands quickly printed and he shouted, "Water dragon, get up." Suddenly, a strong wind exploded centering on him, and the water witch dominated his head and raised his head with all his hair. Roar! A dragon murmur sounded, and then, a faint blue water dragon roared out of his body, biting into the giant palm like a cloud in the sky. Snapped! Just like the glass is broken, this water dragon, which is dominated by the water witch's main body power, only broke for an inch of time and broke apart. Too weak. King Jojia shook his head. The water witch dominated as if he didn't look at it. He didn't look at these people, but screamed with all his energy, gather the old husband. Suddenly, I saw the void in the sky. After the collapse of the water dragon, thousands of water drops formed. At this moment, it seemed like it was being dragged from all sides. At the same time, they came together from all sides, and then continuously twisted and merged to form a path. Huge thick water waves. Immediately afterwards, this water wave once again blasted towards the giant palm of the king of Jolong. With a loud noise, this water wave actually passed through the giant palm of the 9 Calamities king, and then wrapped the giant palm in it, like a grinding wheel, and began to wipe out the power on this giant palm. Oh! King Jojia saw this, raised his head for the first time and looked at the master of the water witch. His eyes were slightly surprised. He chuckled. The use of the rules of heaven and earth is quite wonderful. At the outermost part of the crowd, Ran Jiyu and Qingxi saw this scene, and their expressions became extremely excited. Even the sword unparalleled, he could not help raising an eyebrow. Rumble. The water wave wrapped around the giant palms of King 9 Calamities, constantly crushing and annihilating the divine power above the giant palms, and this water wave, likewise, was quickly annihilating and annihilating. The water which dominated and watched this scene. In his heart, a voice kept roaring, "Destroy the old man, destroy the old man." Time passed slowly. After a short while, King 9 Calamities' huge palms consumed most of the power, and the water wave dominated by the water which also left only a thin layer. The water which dominated the expression to the extreme, and even a forehead, a row of fine sweat appeared because he was too nervous. Just when King Jojia's huge palm was about to be completely wiped out by the water wave dominated by the water witch, King Jojia seemed to know the ending, looked back, and said lightly, "You use the rules, it's not bad, unfortunately, my strength is still a little worse." The water which dominated for a moment, didn't understand the meaning, and wondered, "Why what?" "Don't wait for him to finish." I saw that the water wave, which was already thin like a cicada's wings, went one step ahead of 9 Calamities' giant palm that was about to be worn away and destroyed. "Do not." The water which dominated his face, his eyes flashed with unwillingness. "However, the ending is doomed. Stay back." King Jojia shook his head. Judging from his gaze, the use of divine power by the water witch master is quite good, but it is only limited to good, and it won't make him particularly attractive. Seeing this scene, the master of the water witch suddenly became drained as if he had been completely drained. Failure to join King Jolong's camp means that he will not even have a foothold in the ruins of Tai Luo, let alone revenge for his innocent and tragic apprentice. Yes, I would like to thank King Jojia for pointing. The water witch master forced a strong smile on his face, arched his hand at King Jojia, turned his head and walked toward the periphery of the crowd. No one knows how heavy his pace is at the moment. For him, missing this opportunity, maybe he has no trace of revenge for his apprentice in this life. The crowd gradually dispersed its way. The ultimate masters present were all looking at the water witch master quite complexly. Although he still did not take the palm of King Jolong in the end, everyone who could see it clearly saw that the palm of King Jolong had reached the limit. Perhaps as long as the water wave dominated by the water which can persist for 3 breaths, the ending will be quite different. Dominated by the water witch, he proved his strength. In this world, the strong are always respected. Chapter 4176. Xiaoqing, Otoni, for the teacher. I did my best. After the water witch master came back, he sighed. He didn't need to think about it and knew that Ran Jiyu and Qingxi, who have always had a good relationship with Dechua, would be frustrated. "Master, you have done a good job." Suddenly, Ran Gus's gentle voice came into his ear. The water witch master looked up and saw Ran Guzheng looking at him with a gentle smile. "Yes, master, today you are awesome. You must know that it is the king of 9 calamities, the most recognized master in the universe. You were just equal to him just now. If it was not a little worse in the end, you would be better than you. He's already strong." Qingxi looked up, grinning with a particularly proud look. When the water witch dominated, he could not help feeling a little moved, and his original heavy mood became better. "Don't talk nonsense. The king of Jojia is just a palm of your hand, but the teacher is going all out. Can they be compared? Shui Wu ruled a glance at Qingxi and said with a smile. Ah, it's almost the same. Qingxi said with a smile. Jian Wushuang looked at this scene beside him, his heart warmed slightly. In the hundreds of thousands of years of his practice, he has been accustomed to killing and plundering, to being cold to human beings, and to being indifferent to the world, but he has rarely seen the purity and simplicity of the three masters and apprentices. After a while, the master of the water which looked at Jian Wushuang side by side, and said apologetically, "Child of the blood sword, in the ruins of Tai Luo, our masters and apprentices intend to leave, and we cannot protect you." Jian Wushuang heard a little bit of words and replied, "Water Witch Master, then where are you going next?" "Back to our own star field, although the location is a bit remote, but fortunately, there are not many strong ones, and maybe it is more suitable for us." Shen Wu, the master of the Water Witch, replied. Jian Wushuang thought for a while, then nodded. For them, perhaps returning to the star field that belongs to them is indeed the best choice. Therefore, he did not block the exit. Although Jian Wushuang admits that, with his current strength, it is probably no problem to protect the three masters who control the Water Witch, but forcing them to stay here may not be a good thing for them. He respected the choice of the three apprentices. "Bloodsword friend, then we have a chance to see you again. Bloodsword, goodbye. We are located in the Sanyang astral realm of the virtual Windstar domain. If you have time, you can come to us. Bloodsword, you are not strong, so it is best to leave here as well. I don't want to see you die here like my big brother." "Hey, I don't mean that you are going to die. In short, take care." The water which dominates, Ran Jiyu, and Qingxi, bid farewell to Jian Wushuang. "For sure." Jian Wushuang nodded with a smile. Subsequently, the three left this step by step and walked towards the distance. Four-sword Wushuang, he pulled down his hood, lowered his head, and walked step by step towards the king of 9 robbers, wearing a wide black robe, and pulled down his sword without a brim. He could not see his face at all, I can only see the chin. What is this little kid who dominates the 4th series? Well, this 4th level dominates, and I want to go to the king of 9 robbers to try it out. The 4th level dominate is a joke. In the sound of discussion, Jian Wushuang's expression was unrestrained, and he stood still in front of King Jojia. "You have to try it, too." King Jojia looked down at Jian Wushuang, but his gaze was abrupt. The nearby Qingfeng Shenhu also frowned. In the Tara ruins, the ultimate is everywhere, and the number of the 5th level dominates is relatively less. As for the 4th level, it is even less rare. Now there is a 4th level master in front of him, and behind him is also carrying a sword, obviously a sword repair. This made Zhu Jiawang instantly think of Jian Wushuang. But soon Zhu Jiawang's heart denied this judgment, because the scent emanating from the black people in front of him had a great gap with Jian Wushuang. In the impression of King Jojia, the breath of Jian Wushuang is calm and restrained, like a peerless magic sword hidden in the scabbard. However, the person in front of this black robe felt the ultimate darkness, the extreme cold, without the slightest emotion. The breath gap is so large that neither Zhu Jiawang nor Qingfeng Shenhu recognize the sword Wushuang. The reason for this is that after the sword Wushuo took control of the Tara Excalibur, the soul breath can be completely covered by the Tara Excalibur, and the extreme cold and dark breath that he now exudes is from the Tara Excalibur. With the breath. In this case, unless the king of Jojia saw the appearance of Jian Wushuang, or it was as cold as frost, it could be recognized by Jian Wushuang's figure or a simple manner. Otherwise now, the king of Jolong and the prince of Qingfeng failed to recognize the sword unparalleled. They are only the black-robed man in front of them. They are also a 4th level dominator who is roaming in the ruins of Tai Luo, and they are still the kind who cannot control themselves. www.mtl no less than the king of 9 robbers, a 4th-ranked master ran over, and in many people's opinion, it was indeed beyond control. At the moment, sword unparalleled, covering his body under the black robe. After hearing the words of King Jojia, he did not answer, but instead reached out and pulled out the magic sword behind him, and responded with his own actions. Sword Wushuo carried 2 Excalibur swords. The Excalibur sword now pulled out is red, and there is a faint sense of sharp cutting through the sky. It is precisely the transformation of Wu Ling Excalibur after being transformed by Tai Luo Jian Ling. The other sword was entwined with ancient vines, and the breath was unusual. "Go ahead." A husky voice came from under the black robe. Hiding his head and revealing his tail, he made a mystery, "So I don't know the height of the sky." King Zhoujia shook his head expressionlessly, and then raised his right hand, pressing down hard against the sword. Boom! Suddenly, the numerous palms of the defeated enemy suddenly condensed in the void, and immediately covered the sky, carrying the power of terror, and pressed down towards the sword. Jian Wushuang, like being frightened, still lowered his head, and did not mean half resistance. Suddenly, the ultimate master who watched countless times around saw this scene, and couldn't help laughing at it. "This little guy, I guess I have never seen such a horrible hand. Ha ha ha, look, he's scared silly." The juniors are really overwhelmed. An ultimate master shook his head with a smile. For them, Jian Wushuang's self-assertion was like a funny episode inserted in the solemn atmosphere. "Look at it, this little guy will be scared by the palm of Zhu Jiawang, leaving him with a psychological shadow." Desktop users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iRead Novel. Chapter 4177. In the void not far away, Wu Shirei, who had already gone far, dominated the three, and felt the huge movement here, and could not help but glance back at will. As a result, the three of them were shocked at a glance. "Mr. Master, that those who are picking up the King of Nine Robbers," but the Bloodsword Master Ran Jiyu wiped his eyes, and some dare not give up. The Master of the Water Witch was equally astonished, nodding his head when he heard the words, and said, "It is indeed a little friend of the Bloodsword. What does this guy want to do?" Qingxi saw this, and could not help but stomp her feet with some worries. The Lord of the Water Witch shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "Bloodsword friend, I want to come to see me defeated, and I can't join the King of the Nine Robbers. I'm not willing to try it." The three did not know for a moment whether the sword was uncontrollable or the newborn calf was not afraid of the tiger. Simply, the three of them stopped completely, intending to stop and take a look first. In case the sword Wushuang accidentally was injured by this palm, they might be able to save the sword Wushuang. Rumble. The giant palm was pressed inch by inch, the void was twisted, and even the whole mountain trembled. The sword unparalleled, still does not have the meaning of half-hand. 300 feet. 100 feet. 50 feet. The giant palm was getting closer and closer to Jian Wushuang, and the violent wind was blowing in his black robe. "Why is this person here to come to play with this seat?" King Zhoujia frowned, his eyes flashed with displeasure. If this continues, Jian Wushuang will be crushed to death by the power carried by that palm. 20 feet. This giant palm completely suppressed all the light above Jian Wushuang, just like a thick and heavy cloud covering him. This little guy is deliberately trying to die. What is he doing? Some of the ultimate masters of the spectator could not help but shake his head and wonder. In the distance, the three dominated by the water which saw this scene even more tightly. "Bloodsword boy, what does he want to do?" The master of the water which completely did not understand the sword unparalleled. "Bloodsword, you guys, run away," Qingxi said anxiously. And just when this giant palm was about to be pressed against Jian Wushuang's head, King Zhoujia raised his arm and planned to dissipate the power of this giant palm. The sword is unparalleled, and the five-knuckle fingers finally clenched slowly. "It's time to see how much I have improved in this millennium." Jian Wushuang's face covered by a huge hood gave a faint smile. Next moment, he suddenly waved his sword. Suddenly, a blood-colored swordmang was cut out of the Wu Weeping Sword instantly, soaring into the sky. The sword was almost at an extreme, and everyone couldn't even see how it was cut out. Just feeling a flower in front of me, I saw this swordman, and it was already split on the giant palm that covered the sky surface. At this moment, the deities wept and the Buddha chanted. This swordman was like a lightning that tore the night and split the entire giant palm into two. There is no obstacle at all, just like a knife-cut tofu. The giant palm that covers the sky and collapses directly. Alas! The sky returned to light. The sword unparalleled has withdrawn Wuchong Excalibur. What? This? How is this possible? Suddenly, the sword of the 9 robbers was smashed by one sword. I am not mistaken. What just happened? The ultimate dominator of the spectators around was a pause, and it seemed that his head was a bit dead, and he did not respond. Immediately afterwards, they suddenly looked at Jian Wushuang. Their expressions were terrified. Countless ultimate dominators before, exhausted all over the palm of one's hand and couldn't get over, and were dominated by this 4th level, so a simple sword defeated. Countless people were stunned, their eyes were falling. In the distance, the water witches who stopped to watch dominate the 3, and their expressions are extremely wonderful. Brother Ran and Ran Ji, please give me a look and see if I have hallucinations. The girl Kinx's mouth widened, and her pretty face was unbelievable. Ran Ji couldn't be better at this moment, his body was shaking, and he said unconsciously in his mouth, how can he be a 4th level master? The master can't handle this palm, how can he take it? The master of the water which had a look of expression, and the whole person stood there. This is still the humble attitude before, and smiled and said that he would let the bloodsword boy who carried a ride. Then he laughed bitterly. I even said that I would let the bloodsword lean on myself to join the king of the 9 robbers. I couldn't think of it. Shaking his head, the master of the water witch sighed from the bottom of his heart, the afterlife is terrible. At the same time, in the eyes of the 9 calamity kings, he jumped 3 inches in his eyes. This sword meaning, he is too familiar. It was this sword, once he defeated him in the trial field. But if this person in black is really that person shouldn't be so strong, right? And the smell from this black robe man is completely different. The thoughts of King Josai flashed across his mind like lightning. He lowered his head and looked with a complex expression. In one look, Jian Wushuang raised his head, reached out and pushed down the wide hood on his head, gradually showing a fair and beautiful face. The king of 9 calamities, I haven't seen you in a long time. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. The sword is unparalleled, it really is you. The king of Jojia shook all over, and an incredible burst of eyes filled his eyes. Immediately after that, he struck his footsteps, and suddenly blasted out. Standing in front of Jianwu double-sided, he looked up and down with a constant look of indifferent expression. At this moment, some astonished asked, where did you go in the millennium and how did your breath change? I'll talk about this later. Jian Wushuang shook his head with a smile, and then looked back, where a figure came quickly. Sword unparalleled. Qingfeng stepped forward, hugged Jian Wushuang with an open arm and gave a strong hug, and laughed heartily. Ha 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 ha, Jian Wushuang, seeing you are all right now, I finally feel relieved. At this moment, he was fully recovered from his divine power, and even seemed to have a little improvement. Released his arm, Qingfeng looked at Jian Wushuang and smiled. Sword Wushuang, do you remember our agreement 1,000 years ago? Jian Wushuang nodded when he heard the words, and smiled back. Where can I not remember? 1,000 years ago, the two were hunted down by Qing Shuzi, and when they fled separately, they agreed with each other. If they could not die, they would meet each other in the future, and they would celebrate with wine. For desktop users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iRead Novel. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.